Hi there, welcome back to Corrie Paper Crafts. It's Karen here, independent Stampin' Up demonstrator in central Scotland. Today's project is this one. It's a tropical happy birthday treat box, or with a different sentiment on, it could be any kind of treat box really. It's a cardstock base and it has a reinforced lid, and the box measures 4.5 inches by 2 inches by 2 inches, so plenty room inside to pop some nice treats or even a nice scarf or some makeup or something like that. So I'm going to very quickly show you how I made it. So I'll pop this one to the side just now. What you're going to need for the box is a piece of cardstock which measures just short, about 1/16 of an inch short of 8.5 inches by 6 inches. So 8 7/16 by 5 15/16, but if you line it up to 8.5 by 6 and just pull it back about 1/16 of an inch, it just makes sure the base is slightly smaller than the lid and it will fit perfectly. So, excuse me. So then you can cut your DSP for your lid to 8.5 inches by 6 inches, and using a piece of 12 by 12 designer series paper, with this part being 6 inches, that means that you'll get 2 pieces out of your piece of DSP. So it's all about being economical. This card base that I'm using, that I did with this box here, is Old Olive, and the designer series paper for the lid is Tropical Oasis. Now I was very careful how I cut this paper because it is slightly directional. I don't suppose it really matters, but the way you look at it sometimes catches your eye more than others. So just be careful if you've got a directional pattern, because you want it to face the way that you want it on the lid once it goes onto the box. And you'll need a scrap of very vanilla cardstock just for the sentiment on the top. So the scoring is really quite easy. Let me bring in my scoreboard, and hopefully there won't be too much glare. And you're just going to score the base at 2 inches on all 4 sides. It's as easy as that. So that's the scoring done on the base. And then for the lid, because it's reinforced, there will be 2 score lines on each side, so I'm scoring it at 1 inch and at 2 inches on all 4 sides. And the last one, 1 inch and 2 inches. So maybe you can see better on here on the other side that you've got 2 score lines on each side, and that's how you make your reinforced lid. I make quite a lot of these lids, so you probably have seen in my other videos, if you've seen them, how to do that. So just very quickly fold and burnish on all the score lines. And we'll fold and burnish the DSP as well. And I'm just making sure that all my sides line up as I go, so that I'm definitely folding straight. There we go. Couldn't quite find that line there. And last side. Okay, so that's all my folding and burnishing done, so you can maybe see clearer on here that you have 1 score line on each side on the base, but we've got 2 on the lid. So I'm going to put my base together first, and I'll just do this very quickly. So I'm going to cut up each corner, taking the score line away as I go, as always, and then notching on either side of there. And because some of these bits are narrow, when I put this side of the box together, the length of this tab doesn't matter, but it will matter on the shorter bits. So I'm cutting about 1/3 off as I go, because I always rotate my box bases so that it gives them a bit more stability, so that there's a tab glued to each side, if that makes sense. So wedge and cut off about a third. Oops, I take off a little bit more and cut it a little bit straighter. Remove that score line as I go and tab, or wedge rather, and wedge, cut off about a third. And last one, cut my wedges and cut off about a third. So that makes that easier to put together, and it's not going to be hitting up against this side here. So I'm going to turn it over then, and I'm going to add some tearing tape along these edges here next to, oops, my score line. And normally I would add an extra piece of tape on the outer edge as well to stop it moving on the inside of the box, but for the purposes of being quick today, I'm just going to put one piece of tape on. There we go. And then I'm going to take the backing off of these bits of tape and put my box together. So I'll just take all the backings off first. There we go. And fold in any bits of tape that are overlapping the edge, just like that. And then I'm going to take, as always, this straight edge here to meet this folded edge here, put the box together. Oops. There we are. And any furry little corners, I'm just going to snip those off with my paper snips. There we are. So I'm just going to make sure that these corners are all well stuck down, and that's the base of my box made. So I'll pop that out of the way just now and bring in the lid, and we're basically going to do the same thing, but we've got 4 smaller squares within the square on the corner, so we want to remove these 3 outer squares and keep this one in the middle. Then rotate and do the same again. We're going to remove these 3 squares and keep the one in the middle. So the way I do that is, as I did with my box, on this score line I'm going to cut up but remove that score line as I go. But on this line I'm just going to cut right up the middle of the score line, and I'm cutting both past the first horizontal score line to meet that second one. So past the first one and stop at the second one. I'm going to angle that very slightly as I cut those 2 squares off, and then I'm going to cut that other square off as well. So I'm left with this. And then all I'm going to do is wedge either side of these tabs like that, and again cut a small wedge from the edge of here, and it helps if you actually get the wedge up to the score line. Okay, so I'm going to rotate and do the same again. So cut past that first horizontal score line to the second one, but removing the score line as I go. I'm not going to worry too much about this one here, so I'm just going to cut straight up that score line, cut at a slight angle here, remove this square here. I'm going to wedge either side of the tab that's left, plus slight wedge here. And I'm just going to repeat that on the other 2 corners, and then pop this together too. So up to there, slight wedge, remove that tab altogether, wedge either side. Feel free to fast forward this part if you want. and slight wedge here, and last one, cut straight up, take the score line away, just cut up the middle of that score line. It doesn't even need to be straight because most of these bits were either removing or wedging. Take that away, take that away. Doesn't have to be straight either because this wedge is going to be tucked in. So wedge either side and a little bit off the edge of there. So in terms of the tape, I'm going to turn it over to the right side, and these small panels are the bits that are going to join my lid together. So as with the base, piece of tape near but not on that score line, just can't see that one, there we are. And then I'm going to turn my lid over and I'm going to put a bit of tape along the very edge of these outer tabs here. I'm just going to put a piece on all four, like so. Just as close to the edge as I can manage, but leaving just a little gap so that it's not sticking out once I stick the lid together. Now I'm going to ignore all of these ones for now, and I'm going to come back to these little tabs here. So these are the tabs that are going to join my lid together, so I'm going to remove all of those first, oops, like so, and just fold in all the tape that's overlapping so that I've got that out of the way. That one's okay, just a little bit there. Okay, so like I did with my box, I'm going to bring this, I'm going to ignore this part for now. So this straight edge to this folded edge is what I'm going to do to put my box together, just like I did with the base. There. And that's really my lid made, so I'm just going to give them an extra burnish just to make sure that that tape stuck down, and then these bits are just going to fold in, and that's what reinforces the lid. So I'm just going to remove all of these, and I'll just do them all at once, fold in any overlapping bits like so. Come off, oops, there we are, tuck that little bit in there, and the last bit, I'll maybe get it from this side, there we are. Okay, so I normally fold my lids together flat like that, but I'm going to do it this way just so that you can see what I'm doing. So all I'm doing is I'm folding these sides in and sticking them down, and I just make sure I start in the middle, kind of putting my fingers round the score line as I go, and then I can reinforce once I've done that. And that's my box made, and again, any furry corners I can snip off with my paper snips, but that's okay. And that's my box made. And just taking that 1/16 of an inch off the base makes sure that the box goes together perfectly. So now for a bit of stamping. So I've used Old Olive for the base, and that's one of the colours in the Tropical Oasis Designer Series paper. But I felt white was a bit too stark, so that's why I'm using Very Vanilla. And I'm going to stamp in Old Olive ink. And the Happy Birthday stamp is from the Perennial Birthday Cling stamp set, which sadly is retiring at the end of this annual catalogue, and I'll be sad to see it go. I've not long got this, but I'll be keeping it for personal use, and I'm using the Happy Birthday, which I've already got mounted on a block. So I'm just going to stamp that, make sure it's well inked, and stamp it about there. There we go. goes my ink so that I don't lean in it, and then I'll bring in my Big Shot to cut that out, and I'm going to use one of the dies in the Ornate Layers dies, which is the part of the suite that's been released early. It's a new suite that's coming in the new annual catalogue, which launches in about 3 weeks time, and I'm using this die here. So if I just bring in my Big Shot, oops, and hopefully you can see that, so, and hopefully I won't wiggle the camera too much. So I'm just going to pop that in, and because I'm using my magnetic plate underneath and then obviously a cutting plate on top, these dies can sometimes move just because of the magnets. So once I'm happy with the placement of my die, and I think that looks okay, but I'm not directly above it, I'm just going to pop a little bit of washi tape on either side to make sure that doesn't move, cutting plate on top, and just run that through the Big Shot. So let's get that out of the way. Take my die cut out, there we are. Get the plates out of the way as well. There we go, and there's my happy birthday. And all I did was I popped some dimensionals on the back. 1, 2, 3. And before I stick it on, what I really should have done was put my stars on. Here they are here. So I used the Star Designer elements, which I thought are really pretty. And I just popped one on each end like that. I thought stars were quite appropriate for a birthday gift. Oops. Oops. There we are. They can be a bit tricky. And then take the backing off the dimensionals and pop that in the middle of my box, and just check that it's straight before I stick it down, and that looks about right, and that's my box made. So that's the one I made earlier excuse me, and this is the one we've just made just now. I think that's really pretty and I like this sentiment. Thanks for watching, and take care, stay safe, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye bye now.